You hear that? That's the NHL 98 Win music. I can finally play it. That's right, the Canucks came out, played a great game, and they actually played a great entire game, winning 4-0 over those bastard Jets. Sure, the Jets look pretty flat, especially after they let in those 2 quick tip goals, but it takes 2 to tango, and you got to give the Canucks credit where credit is absolutely due. They looked confident starting off. Myers was controlling the play. Schmidt had a really nifty offensive move. He had such a great game. Finally, the bounces went his way, and all the things that he's been doing added up, and he just finally got rewarded for it. I love what he's been doing this whole season. He's been such a great pickup. I mean, out of all the things that we can crap on Jim Benning for, if he had any way in getting Schmidt, you got to give him credit. Although I have heard rumors that because Schmidt had such a great relationship with the Vegas Knights and they had to move on from him, they tried to find him a place where he had played. And that was had to find him a place with players he'd played with, that being Braden Holtby. So I guess you can give Jim Benning credit for sort of being in the right place at the right time and striking. McEwen, I thought, had a nice shift earlier on. He didn't panic when he was chasing to the Canucks zone, and he gave a nice, safe outlet pass. There weren't a lot of dangerous chances to start, but the Canucks were playing really smart and potentially were gaining momentum in that first period, as we would see. Jordy Ben, the Ben that we have. I thought he looked really good in the first period and throughout the game. He does this thing where he's sort of like a basketball point guard where he starts moving the puck up from his end. And earlier in the season, he would panic and he would start skating really fast and he'd look for Quinn Hughes and he'd force a pass. Now he slows it down. Probably slower than I've seen any defenseman on the Canucks break out before. Like I said, he's like a point guard where he kind of just sits right before the center line and he really takes his time. But that confidence is important, and if you have the time, you should take it. And really, the best players do make it look like they have more time. So Ben is really growing on me. I thought that he was definitely just a depth defenseman that had played above his pay grade, and I would have rather have seen Ulevi, but you can't argue with what he did last night. Jake, he had a pretty up and down game like Jake usually does. There was a floating puck from the Winnipeg zone. It went over Jake's head in the neutral zone. Now, instead of starting to skate back towards it like everybody else on the ice was doing, he just stared at it and he tried to bat it out of the air like a baseball bat. He misses it, and now he's caused a dangerous 2-on-1 for the Jets. Like stuff like that, the mental game where he's just sort of a second behind or making these junior hockey choices. Junior hockey in the NHL is not going to work. On the first goal, it was a great effort by Gaudette. He took a hit to make a play on the sideboards. He worked it down low with Sutter. They were both taking hits, controlling the puck. Usually Gaudette is terrible for giveaways, but he was holding on strong. He got it to Sutter and freed him up behind the back of the net. This led to a couple passes between Sutter and Schmidt. Schmidt shooting at the point, and I was looking all over the place for who it tipped off of. It looked like it tipped off of Kopp. There were a lot of tips we were slowing down. Actually, that one was pretty obvious. That went off good old Kopp, who is the guy that Höglander, I believe, caused to explode in a previous game. They scored on their very next shift. Schmidt and the Lotto line get another weird bounce to gain control in the offensive zone. Schmidt shoots, and Miller had a beautiful tip there. That was a funny one on the different angles. It really looked like the puck was in a totally different angle and direction towards the net, depending on what replay angle you were looking at. Now, I've talked this whole year about this whole season, how great Höglander's been, and I've crapped on Virtanen. But I will say, Höglander playing on the Sutter line and Jake playing on the top shutdown line with Bo, I didn't notice Höglander until 12 minutes in. And I think that's because, well, for two things. One, Green plays his top 2 lines like crazy. He plays the Beagle line a lot because he trusts them, and then he rarely puts out the Sutter line if he doesn't have to. And I think that Höglander was just stuck on that Sutter line. He probably would have had a lot more chances and would have been way more useful with Beagle, but I think you kind of spread Höglander around. It kind of sucks because it felt like he wasn't that effective for at least the first half of the game, but I guess he did balance it a bit. And we did see Jake a lot more, and he actually had one pretty nice offensive play. He made a move, he took a hit, sort of fell to the ice and made a pass, and he caused a good chance. So there were a couple good things Jake did, and then a bunch of other times where it was the usual, you're kind of rolling your eyes and thinking like, stop playing junior hockey in the NHL. The Canucks power play. Winnipeg did an unbelievable job of forcing the Canucks first unit out of the zone for their entire shift. But then the second unit came out. First setup, got it on the wall to Meyer, shoots, and old Höglander tips it in for a goal. Miller had a really dumb defensive play. He was forcing a middle pass in the defensive zone, caused a really dangerous sequence. The Jets were all over them. Miller is just still so up and down. Watching Travis Hamonic play, for that contract, giving up nothing to get him, you didn't have to trade for him. You signed him for, just over $1 million? So you're paying him less than, almost league minimum. And you have a guy that is a solid top 4 defenseman, who's one of the toughest guys on their team. I've watched these games before. Winnipeg likes to bully a lot of the Vancouver players. I saw one Jet player was in front of Demko. Pettersson went over and sort of put his hand on him. You could tell he didn't really want to get involved, but he's like, I'm the only Canuck here. I have to do this. And I think it was Kyle Connor just looked right at him and cross-checked him in the shoulder. And Pettersson sort of looked down. But what I noticed, and that's no fault to him. That's not Pettersson's game. I applaud him just for skating up to him and kind of putting in the service. But Hamonic, when he's around these guys, Kyle Connor and Scheifele, and some of these shithead Winnipeg Jets players who are tough, they don't fuck with Hamonic. They avert their eyes. They know that they're not going to get involved with him. He's tough. He can skate. He can pass. He can get shots on the net. I love him. Man, if you can pull players like that, you don't really have to worry so much about drafting and all these assets and where we're going to find these defensemen. If this could just be a cause of the flat cap, where all the money went to the top players and the middle and bottom players really got squeezed out. And again, it's easy to poop on Jim Benning. It's funny that I'm saying fuck and poop in the same episode. But for him to get Hamonic was a really low-risk, no-brainer move. I don't know why anybody else didn't go after him. I mean, if it doesn't work out, whatever, 1.5 mil, it's nothing. I was starting to see in this game the tiniest smidgen of chemistry with Gaudette and Höglander. Sutter can't make plays, but he can shoot, so it makes sense for him to be a winger, and it seems like maybe for this whole game, or at least about halfway through, it seemed like Gaudette was playing center. He ended up always in the center lane, Sutter on the side, and Sutter even had his best pass when he was on his winger side out to Gaudette for a really good chance. Gaudette looked stronger, and I know that he was dealing with some kind of, I don't know, what was it, a disease or a virus or something that had stopped him from being able to put on weight. And maybe that's why he's giving up the puck all the time. I'm still going to stick with most of what I see from him, even in this game too. Even in a game where he got some points and he was one of the stars of the game. He gives up the puck a lot, and I think just mentally he goes to the wrong spots. Maybe he could be a useful guy like Jake. Maybe Jake and Gaudette could be the third least talented, probably the third most talented player on their line, perhaps. If they're playing with two other great people, like the NHL, because you have to worry about the salary cap. Instead of having these great lines, if you can have these duos, if you could have a Miller and a Pettersson and somebody else, or a Pettersson and a Besser and somebody else, kind of like a Bowen and a Pearson and somebody else, or somebody good and Höglander and somebody else, and then you have a cheaper player in that third spot, kind of like Kyle Wellwood. Kyle Wellwood is pretty amazing when he's playing. He was a point-a-game player when he played with Matt Sundin in Toronto. But he's not big, and he ends up getting bumped down to the third and fourth lines where he does nothing. And maybe that's the same thing with Gaudette and Jake. Maybe. But in that situation, you can't overpay them. You just can't. I know that when Todd Bertuzzi played in Detroit, they talked about how they always had these skilled duos, and then they had a tougher kind of grindy person. And they would let Bertuzzi play in the top six if he would play that role. But as soon as they saw his motivation slipping from going to the dirty areas and he's trying to play like a skilled player, because he's a really skilled guy, they bumped him down. And motivation's an interesting thing. Just think about anything you've tried to do in your life, whether it's, for me, trying to stay on a diet, exercise consistently, or keep up with any of those things in your life. You know that it seems easy to do it, yet it's hard to maintain that momentum. And that's obviously going to be magnified when you're playing against the best players in the world in the NHL. So that's a more of a philosophical way of looking at it. But I still don't really like what Gaudette does, but I saw a lot better play. So maybe he just needs to play some better players. I think Sutter is really dragging down any line he's on. The guy can score if you put him in the right spot. That's why I think, again, is he going to be that sort of least talented player? The third most talented player on a line who can shoot? He can. But Gaudette would then need to take over as a play driver with Höglander. Then you have Sutter riding shotgun, who has a decent shot and, a tough guy. He can dig in the boards and stuff. But I think overall, Sutter looks like he's probably going to go. I mean, he's on the expiring year of a contract. The Canucks are probably going to be out of the playoff race. Lots of trade talk, actually. They talked about Jake going to Anaheim for, who is it, Heinen? And Heinen I saw described by a few people that follow the team and cover advanced stats, saying that Heinen they regarded as one of the best third liners in the NHL in terms of somebody who's good for puck possession and responsible. I think he's got pretty good speed. If you can get rid of Jake, I think you go for it. I think he does too many stupid moves. He's not going to be on a winning team. It sucks because of where you drafted him. But that's a sunk cost fallacy. They should never have drafted him. When the book on a player is that they have all the tools, but they don't know how to put it together, that's the biggest red flag of them all. Never draft a player like that, and I think Benning learned it here. So what a fun game that was. It was great to see Schmidt get rewarded. I mean, the Canucks defense looked fantastic tonight with Hamonic, Schmidt looking great. Ben looked good. He's still struggling through it. I would not be surprised if he was injured in some way because he just didn't look like his dynamic self, and he hasn't for quite a while. And if he's not able to find that extra gear and use his speed to effortlessly kind of move the puck out and be that one-man breakup machine, then he gets pinned in. He's kind of like Tyler Myers, even though they're on the opposite ends of height and size. He's like Tyler Myers, where if he's not able to grab that puck and go, they're not super useful in the defensive zone. So that's my thoughts on it. What a great game. Oh, and Demko got his first ever shutout. I'm so glad the Canucks locked it down and didn't let Winnipeg get a sneaky, greasy, squeezy goal in the last couple minutes. Way to go, Demko. Demko was fantastic. He's just so calm. He plays that modern NHL goalie game of, I'm just going to always face the puck, and I'm going to wait shooters out, and I'm going to make it look really easy, and I'm going to cover a lot of the lower net, and I'm not going to leave that high open spot on the short side or sort of flinch down when a shot's taken. It's modern goaltending where it's all about just being big and being in the right spot. And that's what he's been doing. So thank God for that. I'm excited for the next one tonight. What did you think? Thanks for listening.